Hello, everyone. I'm Faith, and this is the Vida English Podcast. Welcome to the Vida English Podcast. You're listening to Language Stories. Language Stories is a series where listeners learn specific English skills through simple personal stories. In each episode, I'll focus on a different part of language as I tell my story. This podcast is for people who have a basic understanding of English, but want to improve their fluency. Today, we are going to learn all about how to use past progressive as I tell you about the night I just had. What were you doing last night at 8 o'clock? Last night at 8 o'clock, I was sleeping. I'm a bit of a night owl, so the fact that I was sleeping that early is quite unusual. By the way, a night owl is someone who stays up late and works well at night. Anyway, the reason I went to bed early was because I had a busy day planned, and I wanted to start the day off right by getting a full night of sleep. My first online class was scheduled for 5:30 a.m., super early. I was planning on getting up at 5 a.m. to have a coffee and get ready for my class. But things did not go as planned. It was around 3 a.m. and I was sleeping away when a loud crash woke me up. I don't know about you, but when I hear a crash in the middle of the night, I always assume the worst. So, of course, I thought someone was breaking into our house. I mustered up the courage to go downstairs and face the robber who I imagined was breaking in. And do you know what I found? Instead of a robber, I found a robot. Our robot vacuum cleaner had knocked over our plant stand. And although there was a big mess to clean up, I was definitely relieved that the crash I heard was caused by a robot and not a robber. Anyway, by the time I was finished cleaning up, I decided there was no point in going back to bed. So my plans for getting a full night of sleep didn't really work out. Regardless, I'm happy to report that my 5:30 class went well, and after my super early morning, I'll definitely be going to bed early again tonight. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Language Stories. If you enjoy the Vida English Podcast and find it useful for building your English skills, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Could you support this podcast by leaving a 5-star rating and positive review on your favorite podcast app, or by telling your friends who are learning English to check this podcast out? Thanks so much, and please stick around until the end of this episode to hear an explanation of past progressive and to get a chance to practice using it. In the story I just told, I used past progressive many times. Let's look at the 4 different ways I used this verb tense. Number 1, to talk about an action that happened before, during, and after a certain time. Example, last night at 8 o'clock, I was sleeping. So in this example, I'm talking about something that happened for a duration of time. It didn't necessarily start right at 8 o'clock. I went to bed even before that. I was sleeping a bit before 8. I was sleeping at 8, and I was sleeping after 8. So this is something that happened before 8, during 8, and after 8. So I use past progressive to talk about something that continued for that time period in the past. Number 2, to talk about a planned action that didn't happen. Example, I was planning on getting up at 5 a.m. to have coffee and get ready for my class, but things didn't go as planned. So in this case, I'm reflecting on a plan I had that didn't actually happen. I said I was planning on getting up at 5 a.m., but that didn't happen. I actually ended up getting up at 3 a.m. Because of the crash I heard. So this was a planned action that didn't happen. So I use past progressive. Number 3, to talk about an action that was interrupted. Example, I was sleeping away when a loud crash woke me up. So in this case, my sleep was interrupted. I was in bed, I had been sleeping for many hours, and something interrupted my sleep. It was a loud crash, and it woke me up. Other common examples you could hear of being interrupted would be, we were having dinner when we heard a knock at the door, or I was working when I got a phone call. You're doing something, you're going along in a certain action, and then something interrupts you. That is when we use past progressive tense. Number 4, to make a polite request. Example, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. This is a common expression people use in English when they are trying to be very polite and a little indirect, I would say. I was wondering if you could help me out. Instead of saying, could you help me out? You're kind of softening it with the I was wondering. So in this case, I'm very politely asking my listeners if they could leave me a review or a rating. And I say, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. So this is an expression in English that's really common, and it's used when we're trying to be extra polite when we make a request. It almost has a bit of a timid tone to it. If you listen for this, you'll probably hear people using it a lot. All right, now it's your turn. I want to give you a chance to practice using past progressive. Try to answer these questions. Say your answers out loud. Remember to use past progressive. Question number 1. What were you doing last night at 8 o'clock? Question number 2. Can you tell me about a time you were planning to go somewhere, but your plans fell through? By the way, if your plans fall through, it means they didn't happen. Something came up and your plans didn't work out. Question number 3. Can you tell me about a time when you were working and you got interrupted? Question number 4. Can you use past progressive to politely ask for help? Thanks for tuning in to the Vita English podcast. Tune in to the next episode of Language Stories to learn future progressive. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, or if you'd like information on taking one-on-one online English language classes, email me at info@vitaenglish.ca. See you next time.